This podcast is all about getting divorced without losing your mind, where Corey Shapiro, a seasoned New York City divorce attorney, shares valuable insights from his book, Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind. He'll teach you how to be more creative and less reactive in your divorce. He also dives into discussions with experts and thought leaders on navigating divorce intelligently and calmly.
Welcome to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. I am Corey Shapiro, and if you're looking to be more creative, less reactive in your divorce, you are in the right place. Last week, we actually had a bonus episode. We had one of our conversations with a thought leader. His name is Michael Lennington, and if you don't know him, you should. Because not only is he a New York Times bestseller of one of my favorite productivity books, The 12-Week Year, he also deep dive into one chapter he wrote about in that book on accountability. And he wrote this new book, Uncommon Accountability, and he explains the victim mindset. He explains the accountability mindset. And I pick his brain to try to bring a lot of these concepts. He's a business execution expert. That's what he does. But I brought that wisdom into the divorce world. So check it out. You can also listen to it on the podcast, and we also have it on BitDO. All right, so let's move to a little story time. And I want to ask you 3 questions, and I want you to answer them in your mind. So the first question is, are you wondering why divorce has or can become so contentious? How much easier would your divorce be if you could master your emotional reaction? And number 3, what if there was actually a way to navigate this challenging process more smoothly? How would that make you feel? Our topic today is why logic fails in divorce. And the reason is, which we'll get into, is because we're emotional. I just saw Inside Out 2 last night for date night with my wife. And it's all about introducing more complicated emotions. They primarily center on anxiety. We're just emotional beings. So it's a good illustration of what happens when we have a little bit more color in our life. And we're not just, simple people with just 2 or 3 or 4 gears. We have many gears. And when we're in this challenging situation, we're just stressed a lot of times. But before we get into today's topic, let's just focus on a quote to set this up. And it's from William Ward. And he describes in this quote, differing responses to wind. But instead of thinking about it for wind, I want to think of it as challenges. The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change. The realist adjust the sails. So again, let's change that word. Think about challenges. Are we being realistic? Are we adapting? Let me give you an example to make this real. Let's say you have a position that's so important to you and you go to court and the court doesn't find it compelling, and actually gives some guidance on what the judge believes is the right course of action. Now, unless you have super deep pockets and you want to spend years in court, you're obviously going to take the judge's direction with the utmost sincerity. If you are gifted, the judge is going to gift you a direction early in the case. But if you're not, if you respectfully decline the judge's direction, there is obviously a chance that you will convince a judge of your position. It has happened, but you're playing long odds. And are you willing to bet, tens of thousands of dollars, maybe even your kid's college education on overcoming that judge's initial impression that you have a baseless claim? Let me give an example or maybe an analogy in the real world. I've been drinking coffee for a while, but I've noticed as I gotten older, it hasn't really settled with me that well. And I've actually started to get in a little pain, just a little bit, maybe pressure on the right side. And I was like thinking nothing of it. But then I was like, this is just probably not good for me. And I know that's so surprising. It took me that long to figure out it's not just good for me. And I went to the doctors, and the doctors basically said, I can't drink coffee. I can't drink caffeine. I can't even drink decaffeinated coffee. I have to go on a detox. And if I am going to go drink it, it's going to be occasional. It's not a daily occurrence. So I had to adapt. And yeah, I mean, it was difficult, but I've been doing it now for a few weeks, and, I'm free of caffeine. It was a major change. I adapted, which is really interesting about this is just a week, not even a week after I learned that I had to do this, I heard someone who was about 10 or 12 years older than me had to do surgery because coffee apparently either burned a hole or ruptured their stomach so bad. So sometimes things that we think are benign just adversely impact us. So let's get to our today's topic, and let's start with a talk about logic. And I want to just ask you another question. What percentage of time do you think we're making logical decisions? Logical decisions. Just any decision. Now, if you think it's 60, 70, 80%, because we're so logical, because maybe when you're listening to this podcast, I see, this puddle. I'm going to walk around this puddle. I see a dog or two dogs coming at me. I'm going to, move away from them. That's that. Yeah, we're doing that. And we're probably even doing that, not even really focusing on it. But when we focus on a decision, very limited. Most of the time, it's emotional. We might be only using logic 5 or 10% of the time. Have you ever bought a dog? I heard recently when they used to sell dogs that you could take the dog home. Now, I don't know anyone who would bring back a puppy after having a puppy one night. But if you think about it, puppies are a lot of work. They, basically take over your life. And they basically could control you based on their amazing ability to manipulate humans. That's how they become so successful. I mean, they don't work, and they just hang out and basically give us love. And it's a great trade-off. And we never, ever complain. We think they're perfect, right? So think about that. We're making decisions based on emotion. So if we know that, the other thing I want to stress is we can't use facts. We can't use facts to convince. Now let's settle in. We can't use the fact to so what do I mean by that? Well, people who are usually in divorce they're emotional. And if they're emotional, maybe they're in some type of pain. Even if they look like they're angry, they're in pain. And when we're in pain, the focus is internal. It's internal. So what are we supposed to do? Well, these are good questions. If people making emotional decisions and facts aren't going to work, what else could we do? Well, how about let's just go hard. Let's do good cop and bad cop. Why don't we just go heavy? Let's do threats. Let's do insults. Let's scare them, right? Isn't that what we do? The problem is when we use force, typically, there's going to be a counterforce. So, for example, if someone says, "Oh, I'll take you to court," let's say you're in mediation and you're stalemating. You're like, "Oh, we'll just go to court. I don't care." That sounds like someone who's actually never been to court. It's like, "I'll just go to war." When you go to court, first of all, the court tries to actually, most times, bring you back to mediation because I don't want you, in most cases, to spend your time, money, and energy in court. But if you actually are in court, it could take years. It could take so much time and money. You have no idea. And your positions are going to change. It's going to change through leverage because you just might not have the resources to continue. Right. So taking someone to court may be really saying to someone, I'm willing to do a mutual, assured destruction, where we're both going to basically lose. We both lose. So in mediation, maybe it could be a win-win. In court, it's going to be a lose-lose. And my analogy, I don't know if you've heard this lawyer statement, but it's when I heard it the first time, I thought it was so funny. So let me share it with you. It's if you have the facts, you pound the facts, right? That's what you go. If you don't have the facts, you pound the law. And if you don't have the law, you just pound the table, right? And I think that's what really using threats and insults does. Now, it's not comfortable using all that, but are you convincing? Are you being compelling? And the answer is no. So think about that when you're trying to evolve your understanding of getting what you want in your divorce. And I appreciate you checking in on this podcast. I thank you for, putting in the work, not just in your divorce with your attorney and going to court, or maybe if you're in mediation and as things are difficult, but also just stepping back and working, on your divorce. This is what this is about, on your divorce, to get a better framework. Sort of like I play tennis, and I'm, like today I was playing tennis, but working on my tennis, not just in my tennis playing, might be stretching, might be thinking about making my shots better, maybe thinking about cardio, anything that I can do to when I actually play, when I'm actually in it, I'm better. So it's going to take time to change these patterns. That's why I'm here. I'm here every week helping you be more creative and less reactive in your divorce. And if you stay tuned for next week, you're going to learn something that I think is a big shift. It's how to be smarter in having these tough talks. And I'll give you an answer. It's not being defensive and it's not raising your voice. So tune in next time.
Thank you for tuning in to the Getting Divorced Without Losing Your Mind podcast. We would love to hear your feedback. Send Corey an email to feedback@gettingdivorced.org. And if you've read his book, please consider leaving an Amazon review. This podcast offers general information only. It cannot replace legal advice. If you need tailored advice, contact an attorney licensed to practice in your area.